Hi there, my name's Gordon McCrory. I'm the Happiness Guy, and today I want to take you through a presentation where you will discover the 7 reasons why exercise isn't getting you the weight loss results that you want. And also I want you to learn the one thing that's going to make the biggest difference to your weight loss. So if you are exercising, if you're frustrated with your results, and if you want better results, then this presentation is going to be fantastic for you. Let's get straight into it. I'm going to start with the basics and then make it just kind of add a little bit more kind of detail to it. Weight loss basics, it is in essence calories in versus calories out. And I know that you're not learning anything new at this yet, but we've got to cover the basics and then just build through it. So the food and drink that you have is your calories in, and then kind of whatever you do, whatever movement activities that you have, kind of these are your kind of primarily your calories out. So those are the weight loss basics. Now let's have a look at kind of calories in a little bit more detail. So to start off with, you need a deficit of 3,500 calories worth of fat to lose 1 pound. You therefore need 49,000 calories worth of fat to lose 1 stone. That's 14 pounds by kind of 3,500. So 3,500 calories of fat to lose 1 pound, 49,000 calories of fat to lose 1 stone. So to lose fat, we either need to eat less calories or burn more calories. Nothing new there so far. But when it comes to fat loss, the number of calories you need to burn is not quite as simple as you think. So the number of calories you need to burn relates to the exercise calories, and that number that you need to burn is not as simple as you think. The reason for that is we've actually got 2 main energy stores. We've got our fat stores, and we've also got carbohydrate stores. Fat stores are stored kind of, we see them, they're the unsightly parts. Carbohydrate stores are stored as energy, largely stored in and around the muscles. And here's one of the kind of first, if you like, bummers about kind of exercise and kind of burning calories. When you exercise, you don't just burn calories from fat, you also burn off calories from the carbohydrates, calories from carbohydrates stored in the muscles. Now going back up to the very first kind of bullet point on the slide, to lose 3,500, or rather to lose 1 pound of weight, you need to burn 3,500 calories from fat. But as I've said on the last point, when you exercise, you don't just burn calories from fat, you also burn carbohydrate calories. Let's make that a little bit clearer. So let's go into a little bit more detail in terms of kind of our fat stores and our carbohydrate stores, just for a moment, just so that you've got a better understanding of what's really going on. So from a carbohydrate perspective, we can store in the region of, depending on if we're male or female, kind of how fit we are, kind of body size, that sort of thing, somewhere in the region of 2,000 to 3,000 calories as carbohydrates stored in and around the muscles. They're in very limited quantity. And so by very limited, 2,000 to 3,000 is not very much. So we don't store an awful lot of energy in carbohydrate stores. I've mentioned that it's stored in the muscles. And these calories, when we burn them, we need to replace them. Now I'm going to go into more detail. There's a graph, I think, on the next slide. But just bear in mind that any calories that we burn during exercise that come from carbohydrates, we're going to need to replace. Our fat stores are different to our carbohydrate stores in that we can store an infinite amount. The amount of energy we can store in our fat stores can get bigger and bigger because we can lay down an infinite amount of fat, an unlimited quantity of fat. Obviously, fat is the stored energy. Kind of, I've said that it looks squidgy. Kind of, most of us don't like how it looks. And that's the energy, that's what we're wanting to lose when we're exercising. We don't want to lose our carbohydrate stores, we want to lose our excess fat stores. In every stone of weight, there's 49,000 calories stored. So if we're 3 stone overweight, we need to burn at least 150,000, 147,000 calories. So now I want to have a look at when you exercise, how much calories get burned from carbohydrates and how many calories get burned from fat. And kind of obviously the one that we're most interested in is fats. Now, energy substrate, if we just look at kind of the title on this, kind of energy substrate use simply means which of the available energy sources is the energy that we're using, the calories that we're burning coming from. On the bottom of this graph, what we're looking at is intensity. So on the far left, we've got at rest, and then as the exercise becomes more intense, we can see that the balance of carbohydrates to fats to proteins change. Now, forget the proteins for now. That's not really that important for this particular message. What we're interested in is the fat calories as a percentage and the carbohydrate calories as a percentage. So at rest, when we're doing nothing, you can see that the blue suggests or shows that we're burning the vast majority of our calories from fat, and then some calories from carbohydrates. As exercise intensity increases, then we burn more carbohydrates and less fat. And up until the point when we were breathing really, really, really hard during kind of tough exercise, we're burning almost no fat at that point. We are simply burning carbohydrates. So that's a really important thing to be aware of. When you're exercising harder, you are actually burning, as a percentage of the overall energy burned, as the overall calories burned, it can become a really small amount of fat and an awful lot of carbohydrates. And in the next few slides, this will make a little bit more sense again. So let's take walking as an example. So an average female walking for an hour might burn 350 calories. So that would seem to suggest that you would need to walk for 10 hours to burn 3,500 calories, which is a lot of walking, 10 hours, to lose 1 pound. However, to burn 3,500 of fat calories whilst walking, so calories from fat, you would need to burn a total of 7,000 calories, because only half of them, remember onto the previous kind of slide where we saw kind of some fat, some carbohydrates. So relatively low intensity kind of exercise, only half of the calories come from fat, the other half are coming from carbohydrates. And in this example, a class like kind of body pump would be similar. So it's kind of lower level intensity exercise is kind of burning higher levels of fat. So let's look at a second example would be something like kind of circuit training, but it could also be something like body attack, body combat, spin, something CrossFit-esque. Obviously I mentioned circuit training, running. Something that's more intense is going to burn more overall calories, and that's kind of pretty straightforward. Before I move on, what I would say is just in terms of the arbitrary number that I've taken here, kind of 600, I'm using this as just as an example. Some females that are kind of fitter may burn more. If we're less fit, then we may burn less, because it's kind of related to how much energy we can expend during the class. So it's really just to say that, look, more intense exercise will burn more calories than less intense exercise if we do it over the same duration. Then when we look at the number of calories burned versus the number of calories to lose an amount of weight, we begin to see how the number of calories burned is very small in relation to the number of calories to lose, in this example, a stone. So it would take, to lose 49,000 calories, it would take 81 hours of exercise. And that number assumes that all the calories burned come from fat, but they don't. With more intense exercise, the percentage of the calories that burn from fat kind of reduces. So in this example, we're seeing, and again, I've picked a number, and it could be lower than this. I've picked a kind of reasonable number. Only 35% of the calories burned during the exercise session are coming from fat, which means that to burn 1 stone from this style of exercise, You need to exercise not for 80, 81 hours, but nearer 228 hours. So you would need to burn in total 140,000 calories, of which carbs would make up 65%, fat would make up 35%. The 65% of the carb ones, you're constantly re-eating kind of day after day after day because you need to replace the carb ones. The 35% of fat ones, you don't replace. But the message here is 140,000 calories burned, about 228 hours of exercise to lose 1 stone. And that amount of exercise for that amount of weight loss is vast, but yet these are the numbers. This is what the science says. And I would ask you, if you may well think, oh, come on, that can't be right. I would ask you to think, how effective is exercise for you when it comes to weight loss? How much exercise are you doing and how much weight loss do you see? And we're going to go into kind of a lot more or a bit more detail and look at a couple of other factors that are influencing things here. But these are the numbers in relation to calories and where the calories are actually coming from that you burn. So next I want to talk about exercise and hunger. I mentioned carb stores and I mentioned that as you exercise, you need to replace them. But in this example, what we're looking at is, let's say you didn't replace them. Let's say you were on a relatively low carb diet. Then over a number of days, your carbohydrate stores would fall. Remember, I said carbohydrate stores could be somewhere in the region of, say, 2,000 to 3,000 calories. So if you're eating very few carbohydrates and you're exercising a lot, then you're going to see you're not going to see, but what's going to happen internally is your carbohydrate stores are going to fall. Now, as your carb stores deplete, then normally what we would see is, amongst other things, we would see an increase in hunger, as you can see there. That causes, when they get particularly low, a hormonal takeover where you then, I won't say binge eat, but for some it would be that, but you're famished, you're really, really, really hungry, and another part of you takes over to refuel. So what we often see with people that are exercising a lot but then not eating much by way of carbs is that they're unable to stick to their plan kind of after kind of certainly kind of day 4, kind of them, they would often be falling off the wagon because they're just too low in carbs. And there's a hormonal mechanism in there to make you refuel and replenish them because you don't want to run out of energy. So one of the things that we're all told is just eat less and exercise more. Well, and obviously my comments here are kind of really and good luck, because if you eat less, and especially if you're restricting carbohydrates, you're going to have this issue with your carb stores falling. If you exercise more, you're going to have this issue with your carbohydrate stores falling. So causing the carbohydrate stores to fall makes it really, really difficult, nigh impossible, to eat less and exercise more. Let's look at some of the other negative factors that are affecting why exercise is awful and kind of doesn't help with weight loss anywhere near as much as you might think that it would. So, low carb stores, which we mentioned earlier. So exercise depletes the amount of carbohydrates you have. If you don't replenish them properly, then that will make you feel tired. And when I say that will make you feel tired, hormones then kind of kick in that make you feel tired. That often results in people moving less to conserve energy. So think of it. You've got up early, you've kind of worked out hard at the gym, you've kind of eaten a reasonable breakfast, but not much bigger than you normally would. By either the middle of the afternoon, often then, you'll kind of feel pretty tired, or perhaps later on when you get home. But moving less is one of the side effects of low carbohydrate stores. So I guess the message there, if you're going to kind of do away with that, is make sure you replenish enough carbs. Low carb stores also make your mood worse. So not only do you move less, but you just don't feel really good. It might be very subtle. But again, it can increase emotional eating. Because when you don't feel quite right, many of us reach for a glass of wine or kind of some chocolate or whatever, some kind of food thing often. So again, and that is sitting on the wrong side of helping you lose weight. So the next factor that I want to kind of just bring to your attention is something called moral licensing. And that's the kind of the thing that happens when you've done something that you're kind of quite happy with, when you're kind of proud of yourself. So let's say you don't normally go to the gym, and that week you've gone three times in the week. So you think, right, I've done really well, and then you tell yourself a story, which is, so therefore I've earned this pizza, or I've earned this takeaway, or I've earned this extra bottle of wine, or whatever the thing is. That might be true, but it's not helpful, because if the thing that you've earned has got calories in it, then those calories are eating into and often completely or almost completely negating the calories that you've burned in fat or of fat at the gym. So moral licensing increases often with exercise. So the lesson on this one would be, is that pay attention, is that something you're doing because you exercise, as we've seen already, does not get you anywhere near as many calories as you would like, and these treats might well just be holding you still, holding you in place, and that would be really frustrating. So by all means, you should be praising yourself, and be pleased with your efforts, but don't then expect to be losing weight if you eat kind of things that just balance the scales out that we saw in the beginning. And lastly, for almost all beginners and even some more experienced exercise impacts on willpower. Now, it can work both ways, but if your carb stores go low, your willpower goes low. If the exercise was really hard, your willpower too hard or almost too hard for you, then again, that's sapping some of your willpower. For more experienced exercises, willpower kind of, even with very hard exercise can enhance willpower. So it's a kind of a little bit complicated. Kind of exercise and willpower is a double-edged sword. But particularly for those that are beginners, if they're not replenishing their carb stores, their willpower is going to get depleted, and then they're going to eat the wrong things. And the other thing kind of in and around that is, even if it's not to do with kind of depleting their carb stores, if the exercise is too hard, then or really, really hard, then again, putting yourself through that, you've only got so much willpower, but then when you get home, you may eat the wrong things. Now, just be aware of it. You'll know yourself what you do and don't do. Not everything will apply to everybody, but these are kind of some of the things that could crop up again and again to be holding you back. So the last set of kind of negative influences, if you like, or things that can go wrong, would be the problem of twos. So I'm going to start off with kind of talking about too often. If you're new to exercise, you've got to start small and build it up. You can't go 5 times a week. You're probably not going to enjoy it. You're going to set yourself up to fail, and you're just going to quit really, really quickly if you go 5 times a week, week after week after week, because your life's just not going to support that. And as soon as you don't go, then you're going to kind of often beat yourself up. So start smaller. I think kind of going twice a week or 3 times a week, that would be the way to go. But 5 times a week would be too often for most people, and that's especially true if the exercise is too hard. Many people they choose exercise that actually feels too hard. They think that by feeling the burn, by pushing it really hard, that's kind of what's best for them. However, if that results in an experience that they don't enjoy, or one that causes their body to hurt for days, then how long are they going to kind of keep going? So something that's too hard means that someone's going to have to, after a period, try really hard to motivate themselves to go to the gym, and kind of using all that energy and effort and willpower to just get to the gym. That's not how to approach exercise either. It's fine for exercise to be challenging, but I would say it wants to take you a little bit out of your comfort zone and come back in, a little bit out of your comfort zone and come back in. If it feels like hell and you're new to it, almost no one's going to kind of stick that. So pay attention to your body. in that respect. Don't pick exercise that's too hard, because the only way exercise is going to help you in the long run, and it will, is if you are able to persist. So don't pick exercise that you're pushing yourself too hard. And too long, exercising for too long. Most people think they need to do an hour at a time, but it's actually much easier to start small and build the habits up. So if you're not exercising already, getting out for a walk for 10 minutes is much better in terms of forming a habit than trying to get to a really hard gym class that you're going to hate the idea of. Pick something that you've got enough time for and start. Once you get that in your life, if you're doing it and you enjoy it, you'll find more time to do it. But if you're doing it and you're hating it, you'll soon drop it. So I really love the idea. I often think of it a little bit like the three bears. So it's kind of too hot, too cold, just right. You're looking for just right when it comes to exercise. What exercise could you do that's going to kind of draw you to it rather than kind of repel you away from it? Exercise classes are an hour long often because that's the timetable kind of schedule. That's not because that's what's best for you at this stage. That's just because a mass-produced solution must be just that, a mass-produced solution. It's not that you shouldn't exercise for an hour, but you don't need to. And I think kind of a really important thing here is something like high-intensity interval training. The body coach is someone that's kind of really popular just now, and his high-intensity stuff is for shorter periods, and that's important because shorter periods of high-intensity stuff are far more manageable, far more enjoyable, and really importantly, don't deplete the carb stores anywhere near as much. Meaning that the emotional eating or the kind of sitting around because you're really, really knackered doesn't kind of happen the same way with shorter burst high intensity. So high intensity stuff over shorter spells, particularly if you're new, is a great way to go. So don't think that it needs to be really long periods. If it's going to be long, it wants to be relatively light and manageable for you. And of course, too often, too hard and too long, all of these factors also increase the risk of injury, which is something that a lot of people that have gone into injury kind of a bit gung-ho, trying anything that is too hard, too often or too long, they get injured, and then that makes them want to stay away from exercise and they end up with these aches and pains and niggles. So pay attention to the twos. Don't try to go too often. Don't do something that's too hard for you, but yes, be challenged. And again, in terms of too long, kind of start small and build it up. Hour-long sessions, 4 or 5 times a week. Once you're fit and able, no issues with those at all. Although sometimes shorter hit ones might do a better job. But kind of choose what's right for you. Start close to where you are and progress rather than start too far away and quit. So let's sum that up. Exercise actually is pretty awful for weight loss. It's massively ineffective. You simply need to burn far too many calories to see a meaningful difference. And so many of those calories don't come from fat, they come from carbs anyway. That's just what I've said. To lose weight, most people need to do far more exercise than they're prepared or motivated to do. Sporadic gym visits, think of this. Go to the gym 3 times a week. You've maybe burned 600 calories kind of in each visit if you're relatively fit. Could be a bit more, could be a bit less, but 6, 12, 1800. So 1800 doubled up over 2 weeks would be 3600. Double that up again over a month, 7200 calories. You've gone to the gym 3 times a week. You've burned 7,200 calories. Even if half of them came from carbs and half of them came from fat, and it's probably not quite as much as that, then you've burned, say, 3,600 calories, 3 times to the gym, 4 times a week, 1 pound of weight loss over the month, provided that none of the other things that I spoke about earlier in the presentation happened. So exercise is pretty awful for weight loss. It can make you hungrier. It can reduce your willpower, and it can increase things like moral licensing and also emotional eating. So pay attention to that. Pay attention to your life and think, does that happen to me or am I fine? Is that all working okay? And as I mentioned in the previous slides, choose an exercise approach that you want to go to, that doesn't injure you, that makes you feel good at the time that you're exercising. That's where to start. Pick something that you want to do and that draws you to it, rather than something that requires motivation to get it done. Now, I know I've been pretty down on exercise, because what I've done today is I've presented one side, a very powerful side, an accurate side of why exercise is pretty shocking for weight loss. And it is. Everything that you've heard today is true. However, I want to finish with this. Even though exercise isn't effective in isolation for weight loss, if you want to lose weight and keep it off, you must become more active. And in this, I say simple fact, you don't have a choice. There's some very powerful reasons why this is true. Now, it's out with the scope of this presentation. I'm going to put together another one, almost kind of the other side to why exercise is going to be helpful for weight loss, but it won't change any of the facts that I've just told you about. It's just there's a few things that exercise does very well that does lend itself to help with weight loss. But for now, if weight loss is your thing, if you want to lose weight, then the single thing that's going to make the biggest difference is changing your eating, because you can impact far more on your calories that way than you can through exercise. And when I say changing your eating, I don't mean going on a diet. That doesn't work either. And the more times you go on a diet and the more times you fail, the less likely you feel that you can succeed the next time, so your confidence really falls. However, what the science shows is when you add exercise onto dietary changes, you get much bigger, faster progress than either exercise can do on its own or nutritional changes can do on their own. So exercise plays a part, and it's got some really good reasons why it does. But on its own, as your focus for weight loss, it is really poor. So if you want to lose weight, don't put your energy focus into exercise in the first instance, without making changes to your eating. So either do both, change your eating and exercise, or focus more on your nutrition, because that's where the results are to be had from a weight loss perspective. If anyone's got any questions or wants any help, then I would absolutely love to help. There's the various different ways that you can contact me. You can get me on my mobile. There's my kind of email address, and I've got a Facebook page where you can kind of message me as well. Take home message. If weight loss is what you really, really, really want, do not make your primary focus exercise. Unless, of course, it's already working for you. But given that if you've watched this far, then it isn't. So if weight loss is your primary focus, don't make exercise the primary way you go about it. Use exercise as an add-on, but make it about your nutrition and making positive changes there. In my next video, I'm going to kind of share the best dietary approach for weight loss. So I hope you have enjoyed this one. I hope you enjoy the next one. Any questions, just ask. Otherwise, thank you very much. Take care.